great. Cheers. But I just think the look, in an environment like this, just the fact you've got a big nose is like, why? You didn't have to. There'll be 1% or 5% of people who will assume that you're caricaturing Jews or some.
But not you.
I didn't particularly.
Then you're talking for them. Is that what you're saying?
I'm trying to make an intelligent guess as to how you'll get responded to.
Intelligent, but you're talking for them. Is that what you're saying?
I think everybody has to try and predict how other people will behave reasonably in response to particular behaviour. If I now shout out, kill all the Jews right now, I think I can predict what might happen.
In here, in this corner, you can.
So nobody
will stop you because you know the rules.
Suddenly it's getting a lot of attention.
Yeah.
So, anyway, we can cut to the chase. Yeah. If your position is that you're afraid for your life, noting my aesthetic objection to what you're wearing, which isn't really that important, then we can have a chat.
About what?
Well, whatever you're here. What are you here to talk about?
I'm here to talk about nothing.
He's against religion.
Okay, well,
I'm against the religion. Which religion?
Islam in particular.
Are you defending Islam here?
In part, yeah, and in part, no.
Okay, you believe in it?
Yes and no.
I think the core practice has great merit, and I think some of the peripheral ideas have real problems, and I think the same in Christianity and a bunch of other religions as well.
In Christianity, which part? Since you touched up on Christianity.
Well, the attachment, in particular, the attachment to the Old Testament, and I can cite you things from the Old Testament which are appalling, and I don't think they're in the
your
spirit
interpretation
of
is incorrect. That's all.
Oh, okay. Now we do have a debate.
One moment, let me do it.
That's all the case is.
I finally know. He said, now I know your angle. You're Christian.
One moment, you would.
I did this last week. I can do it again, and let's try and have a sensible, objective debate. Okay.
Sorry, can you open your thing again?
Are you guys friends?
Huh?
Are you guys friends?
For now, he hasn't tried to kill me yet.
Okay.
That's good.
Did I mess up?
No.
Okay.
Now what's happening? Okay. So you asked me the question.
So you just wanted to go him?
You said Christianity. What part of Christianity?
The Old Testament is as far
I think the core text of the Sermon on the Mount is bang on perfect.
Okay.
Well done. Put it here. That's what I was coming to.
What I can't help noticing.
There we go. Would you be able to read it?
It seems incredibly incompatible with a load of the peripheral ideas.
He's very clever. He knew I was coming to that.
No, I didn't.
Yes,
I'm just clever anyway.
You didn't. So tell me what in Islam then is perfect. More perfect than this. Islam.
In Islam?
In Islam, yes.
5 pillar practice seems excellent.
Okay, 5 pillars. Can you name them, please?
5 pillars. Prayer.
No.
Fasting.
No.
Pilgrimage to Mecca.
No, sir.
Ramadan. Did I do that already? Sorry, Ramadan. Sorry, pilgrimage to Mecca. Assertion of faith and alms to the poor. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Those 5 pillars. I can't help but notice a common.
So what
to
is
your
oneness?
religion.
What is prophethood?
Did you hear what I said?
No,
Do you agree that there's merit to those 5 practices because they're common to most
practice. You say 5 practice.
practices? Yeah. The practice of prayer.
I kind of want to jump in, but
The practice of prayer, the practice of giving alms to the poor, the practice of fasting diligently on a regular basis, and the practice of going on a pilgrimage, and the practice of publicly asserting what you believe, I think are all good practices, which if you're a Christian, they're in your religion as well. So
I have no belief. I have no. This
You have
is for
no
this
opinion.
gentleman.
Sorry.
I have no belief, sir. I didn't say.
Okay, I don't believe that. Everyone has belief.
When
what
Christ
is my-
came here, he didn't establish 5 articles of things to do.
No, but it just so happens that in Christianity you have the same practices. I can't.
Not all the same.
Oh, really? Yeah. So hang on. We have Easter. So Easter is about at the end of fasting from Lent. So hang on. Let's go through the numbers.
So
okay?
Easter is about the resurrection, right?
Let me
What
explain. I'm trying to be concise.
All right, go
Let me
for it.
explain my point.
Okay, go for it.
Number 1. They do Ramadan. We do Lent, followed by Easter. Easter is when we have chocolates because we did Lent, which is when we do Ramadan. Same thing. I can't help
Nope,
it.
wrong.
Oh, okay. Am I wrong?
Let's just rephrase that.
Okay.
Easter commemorates the rising of the Messiah. So we are not talking about some kind of random celebration you have following a fast. There's a reason behind it. Now there are practices that surround the practice, but ultimately the reason behind the entire event is the resurrection.
But he was talking about practices.
So there is no real ramification.
He noticed what you
behind
didn't.
why.
I said I support the practice. I have problems with the theory. You're now presenting me with the theory. I think practice is more important than theory. In other words, walking the walk is more
in the very
important than
generalist way that you go about making comparisons between things that seem similar. We can then say in a blanket term that Satanism is the exact same thing as Islam. Because everything that Satanists hold on to, Islam holds on to in a very general sense. They believe in a God,
I'm
They
specifying.
believe in absolute evil. So I don't think what you're doing
No,
is
because a
very genuine.
Satanist would be in opposition to the fitra. He would go whatever the best moral compass is. We would advocate heading in the opposite direction.
You're on fire today. You're on fire today.
Thank you.
You're on fire today.
Satanists don't say that, first of all.
It's a logical consequence of their
in
position.
anarchism, right? They don't believe in going the
No,
opposite.
but they're hedonists. They're hedonists.
They're hedonists.
Yeah, so that's the opposite of what.
Hedonists, however, in hedonism, they don't only participate in barbaric rituals. For example,
No one said that. No one said that. You're making a straw-man argument.
Satanists, for example, no, you're assuming that hedonism.
No, I'm not. No.
bad.
Well, you have to ask me what I define by the hedonist.
Hedonism is a pleasure seeker, simple as that. However,
What? As simple as
a
what?
pleasure seeker, simple as that.
Yeah, okay,
However,
so-
there are differentiations in pleasures. There are low pleasures, there are higher pleasures. You will find Satanists who only seek higher pleasures, reading, intellect,
Why are we
good
talking
debate,
about Satan? Are
exploration.
you a Satanist? I'm not
No.
Satanist.
You remember why I was saying that in the very
Generally
general
speaking.
broad strokes?
I know.
that you use,
Okay, so
can say
you made your
Satanism
point.
is the
Can I
same
just
as
cover the 5 bases and see where we disagree? In Christianity, there is a practice of fasting. In Islam, there is a practice of fasting.
In Zoroastrianism, there's one too. So I guess
Great.
no,
And the more there is, the merrier, and the
Alright.
happier I am. Yeah, I can't help. And in Buddhism, and in
Right.
Hinduism, I think in Judaism.
So
Guess
you're
what? They're
arguing
all
from
doing.
a universalist position. That's all.
Correct. In fact, I've even got it here.
Okay.
I am a universalist. I think everybody gets salvation. The only problem is, how difficult do you want to make it for yourself? It's about the journey.
What I would say
Satanists
is,
will have a very hard journey to salvation, but they'll make it in the end.
if you insist, well, what I would say is the problem with universalism is that ultimately it doesn't. The thing is.
I was going to say something.
Yeah.
Because
One second, sorry.
I've got no idea who's on
recording when
camera.
you put the camera like that.
I mean, are we talking
We're
for the
tag team.
camera? Are we talking for
I
the
don't know which camera
camera?
we're talking to. We're tag team.
He'll deal with it. The problem with universalism
I can't help noticing you're not on camera. Do you want to be on camera? Is that deliberate?
Turn it off.
he put it there so he can do whatever he wants.
Okay, would you like to be on camera?
I don't mind.
You
The
don't
problem with
care.
universalism ultimately is that it sort of gives you the idea of a very inconsistent God. Ultimately, if there is a God, if you believe in a God that is, for example, justice is the same thing as the entirety of God, and so is maybe, I don't know, love and charity or whatever.
All those silly things. Yeah.
All those lovely higher moral standards, right?
Entrenched in Christianity.
Assuming that you have the perception of a God, and he's just some, like, I don't know, Aristotelian prime mover who made reality.
He's a force for moral good.
A force for moral good. Awesome. Now, the problem with universalism is that ultimately you have all these different moral codes, different moral perceptions, right? And they all contradict each other, but then they'll all claim to do the good. And then now, if everyone has their own way to God, and then you have multiple contradictory paths to God, how can they all lead to, if you believe in a singular God or a group of gods, how can they all lead to, for example, a singular God with a singular moral standard?
Correct. Logically they can't, therefore the conclusion is a chunk of them have got a chunk of stuff wrong. When there's a conflict in opinion, then they can't both be equally right, which means either one of them is more correct than the other, or they could even both be wrong. So I expect there'll be a fair amount of, no offence, nonsense within the text of any main religion. However, if you cut to the essence and find the common denominators, I think that's where the good stuff lies. And I was just pointing out the 5 common denominators between both of your religions, because I think we can hopefully agree that inter-religion friction between religions is not something we need more of right now, okay? At the heart of Christianity stands love thy neighbour as thyself, treat other people the way you want to be treated yourself, yeah? So find as much common ground as you can before you notice the differences, yeah? To what purpose?
Yes.
Coexistence, living.
Because why wouldn't you seek common ground? If all souls are equal, and assuming God speaks to all people in all times and all cultures, at least notice the common ground you have.
Is that an Islamic idea?
It's a universalist idea.
Okay.
Actually, I think it is an Islamic idea because they think everybody is born inherently to be Muslim. Yeah.
What fitra?
Yeah, everybody is born with that instinct, and then they can unlearn it.
Okay.
But I think we're all born equal.
Okay.
I think God cares about all of us equally, and we should try and notice our commonalities. You spend half the time looking for your differences and half the time looking for your commonalities. The differences are clear, and I was asked here what are my problems with Christian theory, peripheral theory.
Sorry if I did.
Okay, and I said, well, one problem I've got is its affiliation to the Old Testament, because there's chunks of things in the Old Testament which seem appalling, and they seem to contradict Christianity.
Let's do. Do you mind if I do all those, or do you want to take it?
You go ahead.
Okay, please tell me everything that is appalling in the Old
I
Testament.
can't tell you everything, but I could give you some
Tell me
examples.
all your problems, and then for each one you tell me, I'll respond into it.
Okay, so shall I just read off a chunk?
Ultimately, you can if you want to.
Okay, I'll read out say 4 and then I'll give you time
That's
to
fine.
respond.
But ultimately, the problem you have is your perception of what's happening.
Actually, you know what? First of all, let me say something in favour of Christianity.
No, it's fine. We understand
I'd like
you
to.
like
I
it.
know you may not, but for your audience, because I am a fan of Christianity as well.
Go ahead.
There's a couple of things I've heard quoted against Christianity which are wrong. One quote is from Matthew, which says, "Think not that I come to send peace on earth. I came not to send peace but a sword," which is taken totally out of. Well, I think it's also taken out of context. But the main one that is totally misquoted is in Luke 19:27, where it says, "Jesus said, all who refuse to obey me, bring them before me and slay them in my presence." Okay? Right now.
You've been hanging out with Muslims too long.
No. I've noticed this being quoted and it's out
by
of
Muslims,
context.
not by anybody else.
By people who aren't paying attention to facts.
Okay. All right.
That is an inaccurate quote. That is Jesus paraphrasing a story.
A parable. Okay. Well done.
So I like to get my
you found this.
Thank you. I like to get my facts straight and find common ground where we can.
And secondly, the one about the sword. The sword is not a literal sword.
I know it's not
It's about enmity.
Thank you.
Some will follow Christ, some will not.
Yeah. Okay, so we're going to go on that. Now, but I'll read 4 things I really have problems with in the Old Testament, and my solution is maybe I shouldn't take it too literally.
Okay.
Deuteronomy 13:6-10.
Yep.
Kill anyone, even your own family, if they worship another god.
Yes.
You're happy with that?
Yes.
Okay.
Do you want me to know why? Do you want to know why?
No,
or?
you know what? We'll go down.
Okay.
If you don't mind, we'll do a quick.
List them
yes,
all
no
off.
answer.
Okay.
And then you can give your explanation.
One second. Do you want
to go with my
specific answer for
techniques?
each point, or is it a general answer? For
I'm
everything?
suggesting for an audience, maybe if I hit 4 so they get the spirit where I'm coming from, you just give yes, no if you can. And yes, no answers sometimes aren't adequate. And then you can explain to me your answers in more detail, then I'll give you the time to do it. Okay, so Deuteronomy I listed, kill anyone even if your own family if they worship another god. Deuteronomy 17:2-7, kill anyone with a different religion.
That doesn't sound right.
Okay, here's an interesting one. Exodus 35:1-3. Okay, now I'll draw your attention to the fact this is Sunday at Speaker's Corner and these camera crews are making money. Whoever does any work on a Sunday must be put to death. Are you good with that?
Carry on, yes.
No,
Sure.
you are?
Yes, sure.
Okay, out of interest, are you working on Sunday?
No, but there's no understanding to it. But yeah, sure. Yes, I am with it.
It looks to me from the camera crews and the YouTubes that somebody is working. But hey,
you can't judge a book in chapter 1. You've got to wait to the end of the book.
Okay.
So you're interpreting the Bible in chapter 1. You've not read to the end of the chapter.
I'm going to give my fourth and final one, and then I'm going to listen diligently to your answer.
Read to the end of the book.
It's okay.
I'll give a fourth one, which just makes my blood.
No, it's okay.
Okay, this one chills my blood. If a priest daughter Leviticus 21:9, if a priest daughter defiles herself by becoming a sinner, she disgraces her father and she must be burned alive. Are you okay with that?
Sure.
Okay, great. Thank you. That was very clear answers. Now you can explain to me your rationale, but just to recap for people, you're okay with kill a member of either own family worship of the God, kill anyone with a different religion, anyone working on Sunday should be put to death, which seems to include you, but I could be wrong, and burning women alive if they don't act in a very, very
specific way,
great, you're happy with all of that, great. Now, tell me how that is compatible with treat other the people that you want to be treated
easy. Right. We are not literalists, right? And yes, these practices were mandated either by the Levitical priest, by Moses, or by God himself. Absolutely sure thing. Now, what you need to understand is that the Old Testament and the New work together synergistically very well. What we are seeing in the Old Testament is a development of people who have been charged with God for a specific purpose. They are meant to be the lights to the Gentiles, the people by which, through their teachings and their works that come from God, the entire world will come to know the true God. And as you can see, we have Christianity, which is a Jewish religion that stems from Judaism. What you're seeing there is them being made perfect, as in they are in a land where their fellow neighbors are all committing all kinds of insane acts of adultery, child sacrifice, whatever the case might have you. The verse concerning if a family member turns to other religion,
insane. Sorry, just to, okay, so I hear your explanation.
The idea here is not about private apostasy where they say, okay, you know what, I no longer believe in Yahweh, I'm just not going to worship him anymore. The idea here is that they're going to go and join the Amalekites or the Moabites.
Very similar to Islam. To some people who
suddenly you guys are on the same team and I'm against you both.
We're not, because they believe in executing private apostasy.
No, that's not true.
If someone becomes an atheist, it's a problem.
No, that's
not what we're saying.
We're
saying that if you go and join...
We'll get that. It's going to be interesting.
If you go and join groups that participate in child sacrifice.
So you're telling me...
Let me finish, because you read the points. You want the explanation. That is what the answer is about. If you're performing some kind of public apostasy, where you're not simply saying, I don't believe in Yahweh and that's it, but you will now want to go and join the Moabites and their idol worship and all the ramifications that come with those, that will unfortunately corrupt the children of Israel and the mission that they're given, then yes, your life is forfeited. Are we ready to do that today? No, we're not, because most people here are not ancient Jews. Okay? In Jesus Christ, the law and the prophets have been fulfilled, completed. So now our perfection comes from Christ and no longer by observing these laws. They were necessary for a time, and that is the biggest difference between what you might have read within Islam and what you have in Christianity. Not all of these commands are permanent. They are covenants for a time. That is all the case might be. Now, no matter what you read, kill all the donkeys, kill all the children, kill your husband, kill your wife, whatever the case might be. We're not saying that God here is showcasing his morality. He is passing his judgment that stems from his love.
Can I comment at any point?
Go ahead.
Before you start, sorry,
not
Oliver.
His morality, but he's passing judgment. Yes. I'm not sure I see the clear blue.
I'm leaving. Sorry, I must say something before I go. Oliver.
Sorry, go ahead.
Is that Oliver?
What?
Oliver Twist? Oh, sorry. Tony, sorry. Tony is a very nice gentleman. He accepted my wish, but unfortunately, because they have to continue with this gentleman.
I'd like to stay in Oliver's
very nice.
Respect. However, I did also say
at any time, if you want to go back in, sorry.
No, it's all right. We'll catch up. No problem. Okay, but he's very advanced than the others.
Fair enough.
He's penny dropped that I was going to challenge him.
If you just said it at the beginning, I would have agreed with you. I didn't hear you say that you were worried.
I'm okay to back and I have
He has EQ higher than anybody else here.
Okay.
IQ is not a moral thing.
No, EQ.
Oh, emotional intelligence.
Ah, now you see, emotional quotient.
My girlfriend would say differently, but thank you.
Your girlfriend, but I am the big nose. Thank you. See you.
So, okay. So I think you've given us sort of a cogent picture.
What's right?
Cogent.
Okay.
You've given an historical explanation
of why.
It seems to predicate on a political interpretation of this, which is about cultural evolution, which I would take to be political.
That would be why Christians in the early first century weren't practicing this stuff. That's why.
So you don't think that you're making this is political. You don't think this is about how to arbitrate society with legislation for masses of people and tribes.
It's not simply just about politics.
I didn't say simply, but that is.
It's about religion more than anything. So we have the idea of covenants in Christianity, Sharias, if you will, in Islam. The idea that like at different times for different peoples, God will make agreements if they follow X number of activities or legislations that God has from His own nature outlined for them. He will reward them with victory, safety, and prosperity.
In and of itself,
so that's what you're seeing.
That's not a totally crazy idea. However, I think it undervalues God, and I think it misconstrues God. I have real trouble construing a God who changes his mind. I find that very, very strange.
Excuse me, sir. Can you name one Christian who believes that today?
No, I'm asking.
There is
apparently, he does. He thinks all practices are fine.
There is no.
Or he thinks they were fine.
They were fine at one point, those practices.
For those people at that time, yes, it was.
Just imagine yourself.
There is no change. If I may as well, there is no changing of mind here.
Well, clearly there is.
Simply because God is exposing different aspects of His morality at different times.
I thought it was judgment, not morality.
And His morality and judgment, because for example, the Ten Commandments, we say that comes exactly from God's morality, right? Now, what we're saying here is that just because God reveals to human beings at different times in our temporal reality different commandments, that's not a changing of a mind. And as an example, if a commander...
It may not be, but can you see that it may not be a totally stupid supposition to go, it seems at least on the surface like you might be changing your mind, yeah?
Okay. If you are reading this from an outside point of view, without any kind of official training or indoctrination into how Christians actually interpret their text, it's important.
Oh, I have to be indoctrinated?
Yes, you do.
I'm a free-thinking individual, and I align with the principle of consistency because it's common to all logical thought.
You wouldn't read Macbeth and think of it as a literal story.
It doesn't claim to be.
Okay.
This does.
It doesn't claim to be literal either, by the way.
This claims to be
It
the
doesn't
voice
say
of
it
God
anywhere.
telling human beings how to behave, including burning girls alive. Yes?
Okay. But,
and you apparently, correct me if I'm wrong, if you were back in that day, you would happily or you would willingly participate in burning a woman alive, yes?
assuming that I was somebody who was outlined to perform that activity, if in the
You
case,
would do that.
assuming that if I was somebody outlined to do that activity, yes, I would, because I would be following the direct
I'd
command of
love
God.
to applaud your transparency on that.
That's
The
right.
question I just gave you, and you just went, you doubled down, and that's cool.
There's no problem with this because it's a problem of progressive revelation. We understand that at different times God reveals different things to human beings.
Well, I think your audience can decide.
Can I ask him a question though? Then? Because then, if you're saying it was right at one point, and providing then God's judgment, morality is always right, given the time, then it's not really wrong
So
to look at it back.
It's the difference between axioms and heuristics, which is what we were talking about, and we're always
it's
on about.
it's about how you understand it. Well, sure, we can go for
Okay, but I'm hunting for axioms. That's the point.
Who do you want me to answer first?
Okay, sorry, my friend here. Dawood.
Okay. Oh, well, I'm David. Okay, that's interesting.
Shalom.
So, Salam. So ultimately, when we are seeing the expositions here of God's law and it being transferred over to human beings and interpreted by high priests and by Moses himself, we are not seeing the complete essence of God's love and justice. We are simply seeing an aspect of it, very similar to the example I'm sure you've seen where a beam of white light passes into a prism and you see colors of the rainbow. The colors of the rainbow are not the white light, but they are how the white light is interpreted within the context of a prism. So God's exactly. Look at that.
We're thinking on the same page, but I think you're misconstruing what that means.
God, well, that's what divine simplicity, but that's a different point. Ultimately, God's law or God's actual morality does not change; it is always the same.
Yeah.
However, the manner in which it is applied at different points in time do change.
Okay.
The application changes.
Yes.
Okay.
So that's why Jesus Christ is important. In Him, you have the fulfillment of the law. The purpose was to perfect the Israelites so that they will be capable of going out into the world and being a light to the Gentiles.
That's political.
That is now completed in Jesus Christ. So no longer need to abide by the laws of Moses in order to become perfected. That now happens with Christ himself.
Therefore, this is a political and tribal mandate. In both of your cases,
well, no,
it's
a covenantal.
a cultural framework, okay?
It's a covenantal
and I think when I'm hunting for axioms, which is what I'm always hunting for, the axiom only occurs at the level of the individual. I think the individual is the basic building block of reality. Not for any political reason, but because the soul, consciousness, qualia, whatever you want to call it, is generated at the individual level. Okay? It's not generated by the collective, it's not generated by the tribe.
Well, I don't know.
Okay, we don't know. I'm not saying it's sure, but it's a totally credible hypothesis.
Sorry, are you arguing for like human beings to be some kind of like primary cause for reality, or the individual?
I'm saying individual souls are foundational in all of these discussions, and the individual is the foundational building block of reality. Yes.
No, I'd say God
more
is.
than the collective.
I'd say God is personally.
Okay,
but
fine. Okay. But given God may well be entangled within this, but that's the whole point. I think the human consciousness is the closest to God-like we get. That's where God is most present.
I don't agree with that. But
okay, God-like was bad.
Go ahead.
That in the mystery of consciousness, I think that's where God touches us most. That's where the hand of God is most obvious and simultaneously most difficult to pin down. Yeah, within consciousness, within our feelings and within our choices. Okay, that's where the action's happening. It's not happening in the matter and the energy. It's happening in consciousness, feelings and choices. Therefore, I take the individual to be the basic building block of reality. Ethics is about intent at the point of choice, and that only happens at the individual level. It doesn't happen at the collective level. The collective aggregates the individual choices after the event, but the actual ethics, so you're responsible for your choices, I'm responsible for mine, you're responsible for yours, and God will and should judge us. That seems to me also common to all religions.
But
okay?
why can't...
So I'm coming from that foundational axiom and trying to be consistent with it.
Why can't it be both though?
I could. I'm happy to explore anything you want, but I'm
because it
trying
seems
to go
a bit like...
Okay?
Because if you do Occam's razor on religious texts, whether it's in the Bible or in the Quran or the text that I know, it seems to be both. God speaks to the individual, but then God also speaks to the group of people.
That's not impossible. I personally think I favour the idea that God speaks to the individual, and that improves the individual and improves the way the individual treats the collective, and the goodness of those choices naturally fans out into the politics. I believe in the clear...
Well, ultimately, goodness is something that isn't derived independent from God, or do you believe it is?
I think goodness is in the fitra, which is the innate moral compass, which Muslims overtly refer to, and I think is implicit in all religions, including Christianity.
I don't think... Now, the Bible does talk about the words of God being written on the hearts of men, to refer to, like, for example, when the Gentiles do things that are of the law without being aware of the law.
Okay, so just meditate on the fact you may have more common ground there than you appreciate. But
unfortunately, when it comes to cultural relativism, we see that, like, different cultures have different fitras, if you want to say that.
A fitra only exists at the level of the individual. There isn't. This is why I'll back up Christianity for a minute here. I think the separation of politics and spirituality, which normally occurs in Christianity, these some strands of Christianity, I think is very, very wide. And the entanglement of politics and spirituality, which is more predominant in conservative Islam, I think is far more problematic. Okay? So I do believe in separation of church and state. Each individual is responsible for their conscience. And what's strange to me is that Muslims are attuned to this idea when they criticize Christians for original sin and the idea that Jesus could pay for our sins. In that, you reflect your understanding that I can't be responsible for somebody else's choice or vice versa. And yet entangling it in a political framework seems to contradict that instinct. So I think you're responsible for your soul, I'm responsible for mine, via our choices which are for all of us, and God, if there is one, more just.
But you know, the separation of church and state was not an intellectual pursuit that happened in a vacuum. It wasn't that the king said, well, all of the Voltaire and all of you lot go into the room and then come up with something. It was something that sort of like history, being the driving force, drives this trend.
I understand.
But
it's a political and tribal trend, and I think within the tribe and the politics, you're speaking heuristics, you're not speaking axiom. You make general rules, Don't have sex until you're 18. You pick a number. You know that won't be actually true for each individual, but in order to make the collective operate, you pick a heuristic, and as long as you don't confuse your heuristics with your axioms, not a problem. But what can happen is, so I'll take the example of eating pork, which I think is one of the least offensive examples I could pick. To me, there was a heuristic which went back in the day eating pork was not a good idea because it was more toxic, and the Jews and the Muslims seem to have had a political tribal law which went don't do it, good idea. But I think to then assume that that was meant as an eternal axiom for each individual is to mix apples and pears. I don't think there's anything in and of itself morally wrong with eating pork, and I think nowadays it's better and it's probably okay. So that would be an example of where, although the core merits of, say, Islam, in terms of the 5 pillars, etc., and Nia, I stand by. Some of the theology, some of the analysis, some of the theory, I think doesn't fit. But if I shed that idea of pork, would the whole religion collapse? No, absolutely not. Because it's in a hierarchy of value, and the key things are in Christianity's Sermon on the Mount,
we have,
and in Islam, 5 pillars, Nia, that's what I see. And if I look at it through that lens, you guys are very much on the same page.
Okay.
Obviously I disagree with that, and I think this is where we're going to have a conversation today later.
Okay, go for it. Carry on. Well, let me put it another way. You've got more common ground than you might appreciate.
I do agree.
Well, unfortunately not.
I do agree.
You do agree.
You can have as many common grounds as you like, but when fundamental...
I think Jesus was all about common ground.
Sorry?
Jesus was all about having common ground.
Did you just read that verse in Matthew?
No, that's my interpretation of what Jesus' life is like.
Okay.
Even his enemies turn the other cheek.
Have you ever read the Bible or the Gospels or any bit of it? Okay.
Bible, yeah.
Well, that verse you just picked up about the sword. Unfortunately, it wasn't about common ground. He was very much about having a delineation between his sheep and the goats.
Got it. Okay,
and assuming that also where it mentions that all judgment is given to the Son of Man, referring to himself, unfortunately is a criteria that appears to be evidence by which he will use to discern who is a true follower of his and who is not.
Okay.
And ultimately, many of his many popular speeches were actually against the teachings of the Pharisees. He wasn't attempting to find common ground. He was coming here with the authority to establish what was ultimately true.
So
and everything else was wrong, and what he was saying was right.
Okay,
so unfortunately, that's a poor interpretation of Jesus.
So my reading of Jesus in John in particular, it's not that he was against the law or against what the Pharisees were trying to uphold. It was more the interpretation and the intention of the Pharisees, because they were using the law as a hammer to like oppress people. And Jesus was like, you are so much focused about the letter of the law as opposed to the spirit of the law. And this is what he does. He does that the entire time.
The spirit of the law.
We all agree on that point.
The spirit of the law is the mechanism of perfection.
Yeah. So we all agree the spirit of the law is very important. And therefore, if I inspect this text with an eye to its spirit, and I appreciate the principle of self-consistency, I say that if I was back in the day, I absolutely wouldn't burn a young girl alive. Every instinct I have says I wouldn't.
It wouldn't be your responsibility. You'd be given the charge to do so. For example, we know
that's the first really crazy thing you've said.
The 12 tribes.
That's what you just said.
All
you want to stand by
contains.
what you just said? I make a moral choice, but it's not my responsibility.
No. As in, within the society that he had established, all 12 tribes had different responsibilities. Most prominently the Levites, who could not participate in any kind of work, but simply would only participate in priestly duty. So unless you were of some tribe that actually was responsible for carrying this out, then no, you wouldn't be involved.
Okay. I think we can see clear. Sorry, you want to say something?
No, I'm just saying because you said it's political, and obviously I don't know too much about it, so I'm not going to agree or disagree. But you say political.
I'm saying, in other words, it's about how you aggregate behaviour between more than one person.
I agree, but what's wrong with the politics
Nothing except because I think ethics occurs at the point, intent at the point of choice. That can only happen at the level of the individual. That's when I make the choice, including the one to burn a woman alive, and that's when God, whatever he, she, or it might be, judges me. Or my conscience, however abstract God may be, that's the ethical. So each man is in a sense an ethical island. Now you make the choices, God will judge you on them. If you're making good choices, they will fan out well for you and the community on a political level, and that's obviously what's wanted. So you want to create political heuristics, general rules, which align with the best ethical axioms.
But given the historicity of this, some of these acts could have created big issues on a communal level. If there was an individual who was sort of betraying the collective.
They could. So
the lady, the girl, who.
Hang on, just a minute. So going back in time, would you burn her?
No, but hold on. I need to first understand before I agree or disagree. But I'm saying, from what the brother was saying, is that if there was. And I want you to think about this. If there was a possibility that if the person who then starts to worship other gods starts to then betray the communal and starts to give intel into information and that
so
brings.
It's not just that. Just to butt in for 1 second. It's
You
not
guys
just
are
about.
slightly agreeing on this point.
No. I'm trying to want you to think about it.
I want to expand here for a second. The idea isn't that they will start worshiping Molech and then start giving away information to the
I wasn't finished, by the way. There's more to this.
Can I interrupt just
Because the
Moabites
Moabites were in war with the Israelites.
Okay, so
that's
as far.
Sorry, if you guys have got mics, so I can represent my point fairly. So I can get mic as well.
I don't know whose mics these are.
Okay. Sorry, pardon.
I'm sure you can hear me because
So I wasn't finished, but you kind of.
Okay. Well, I just want to clarify. You can carry on. I just want to clarify that the problem here isn't just a political espionage. It's about corrupting the actual fundamental fabric of the society.
I understand. I was getting there.
Okay, go ahead.
You want to come on camera? I just think. Look,
what camera are you referring to?
Presumably this one and this one. I don't know.
Okay, I think I'm on that one.
Okay,
and I'm also on that one.
Me again.
Please ask me to move it back one step, if that's possible.
Okay, do you want to? I'll move it back. I just think.
Do you think?
I'm watching a video. It's just better if I can see you talking.
I was just naming as many examples as I could.
Having a motivating dialogue.
So
yeah. No, you're out for a little while. So what's that combo about?
Because
I'm good. You good?
Alright, man. You just mentioned that. I'm trying to big up the